Hello and welcome to Cymbrogi Futures. I believe that extraordinary things are possible when people, place and purpose come together at the right time in the right way. And I want to share a short story with you and tell you about how those three things have come together to inspire the creation of Cymbrogi Futures.
First up, people. Now, we've all heard of Charles Darwin, but not many of you will have heard of the lesser-known young man who was his cabin mate on that famous journey which changed the way we think of the world. Once upon a time, that young man lived right here on this site in a castle. He was local Welsh explorer and family ancestor John Lort-Stokes. Not only did he accompany Darwin on that famous voyage, he went on to map large parts of Australia and the Pacific. There are parts of the world that still bear the names of his Pembrokeshire roots. I like to think that these views must have inspired adventurous thoughts. Let's face it, it's a view that positively invites adventurous thoughts. Later on, a little boy grew up in this same castle, and that was my father. He grew up inspired by the view and those stories of his adventurous ancestor, and it was this that led him in later life to help establish a charity called the Darwin Centre, with a simple mission at its heart, to inspire future generations of young Darwins with a love of exploring and natural science. Meanwhile, the castle, however, was unceremoniously blown up by my grandfather in the 50s after the war. While sad from a heritage point of view, a more powerful rationale lay behind it. Apart from being rather drafty and expensive to run, he felt that in a post-war rural Britain it was time to focus on community, not castles. And you can't build communities from behind a castle wall. It was a legacy of this community spirit and a desire to put an educational mission at the heart of the site's use that was passed on to this generation. And this is the heart of Cymbrogi's people story. The people story, however, would be incomplete without a mention of our new Director of Learning, Matthew Jones, who has spent 20 years at the heart of education in Wales, inspiring thousands of children and trainee teachers. The day he decided to join Cymbrogi Futures, for me, was an affirmation that we were doing the right thing. And here we are, building that community today. Scientists, explorers, artists, poets, storytellers, well-being practitioners and educators to engage and empower a new kind of learning with and for teachers and young people. Place. Well, the place speaks for itself. We live in a time of huge displacement, from our normal lives, from nature, from each other, and often from our own selves, which is why we need places that can inspire calm, imagination, creativity, allow us to reconnect with nature, understand our place in it, reconnect with ourselves and with others. We have here three natural systems at work: an estuary teeming with marine life, a rich and ancient woodland, and a working organic dairy farm. These natural systems are central to our learning philosophy. Many of the solutions to the challenges we face in our man-made world lie in our natural world. In short, we believe this is the perfect place for a truly inspiring learning experience, whether we're children or adults. Finally, purpose. Indispensable for our times. But 200 years ago, the philosopher, poet and writer von Goethe said, "The greatest thing in this world is not so much where we stand, as in what direction we are moving." Now that's the kind of purpose I can get behind, the active, moving kind. It can be personal, it can be collective, ideally both. And when the two work together, well, great things can happen. I spent the last 20 years of my own moving in a direction that fulfilled a personal and professional purpose, but not until recently a collective one. I've lived and worked in China, Africa and Latin America, helping companies, NGOs, social enterprises figure out their role in building sustainable futures for people and planet. How do we make a bar of chocolate without using child labour? When are we going to stop cutting down the rainforest? What do we do about modern slavery in our supply chains? How do we build more inclusive societies? And what are we going to do about a climate changed? Real, live problems. We have some of those answers, but most of the solutions will fall to a next generation of learners, thinkers and doers. Scientists, entrepreneurs, explorers, poets, artists, storytellers, all have a role to play. Which brings me back to purpose. These complex problems can only be addressed with a collective purpose, which is how Cymbrogi Futures came about. Now, Cymbrogi is an old Celtic word that means companions of the heart. It has its roots in Arthurian legends, when knights would fight alongside each other as sword brothers for a common cause. Companions with a shared purpose. And that purpose today is equipping a next generation of learners and leaders with the knowledge, skills and mindsets, the fight, if you like, to take on challenging and uncertain futures with confidence. That's what we're building here. The time of Corona has forced humanity into realising how interconnected, interdependent and fragile we really are. It is an unprecedented opportunity to see, if you like, the gift in the adversity, to learn and adapt to a more resilient future. This is the decade that has to make the difference. And as an old Chinese proverb says, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's time to catch that tide. So, come join us. Now, finally, a quick word on our Learning Festival. We have an amazing lineup of companions who share our vision. Poets, storytellers, experts and practitioners in well-being, creative skills, circular economy and much more. In a pre-COVID world, we'd be hosting this event here on this beautiful site, watching the tide come in. Hold that thought for next year. And in the meantime, tune in to our Magnificent 7 podcasts over 2.5 days, and then join our speakers live for your own questions on Q&A on Zoom after each one. See you there!